There's a version of your life that looks completely fine from the outside, but that's exactly why it's so dangerous, because you're not broke, you're not spiraling, you're not even embarrassing yourself properly. You go to the gym sometimes, you earn decent money, and you show up when it really matters. And if somebody described your life on paper, it would sound solid compared to the average person. So why do you still feel slightly off in every area that matters? That's the 3 B's: body, being, and business. Not terrible, not thriving, but just off. Because I want you to think about a random Tuesday evening. Nothing dramatic happened that day. No big crisis, but no big win either. No failure. You might have trained a little bit in the morning, but it felt half present. You worked all day, but you avoided that one uncomfortable task that you know would have actually moved the needle forward in a meaningful way. You might have eaten okay, but not like somebody who's trying to push forward. So you sit on the sofa, phone in hand, and there's this quiet restlessness in your head and in your chest. Not anxiety, not sadness, just this low-level irritation with yourself that you can't quite articulate. And the reason you can't articulate it is because nothing is technically wrong, but nothing is aligned either. And that slightly off feeling is not random. It's misalignment compounding, not catastrophe, not collapse, compounding across your body, your being, and your business. So let me explain it properly, because I've lived through this and it's horrific. Because there was a period in my life where I was performing well enough to be able to justify staying comfortable where I was. I was training hard, I had fights lined up, I was making money, selling cars, doing okay. People respected what I was building. And from the outside, I looked like I was locked in, but inside I was fragmented in 1,000 pieces. So I trained like an animal for a few days, pushed my body, hit everything I said I was going to hit. I'd feel sharp, focused. And then as soon as there was that space, that gap, as soon as the pressure dipped, I just loosened the grip. Not in some dramatic, life-ruining kind of way, but just enough. A late night here, a drink I didn't need, a meal that's not aligned with the body that I'm trying to build and the way I'm trying to feel. That morning alarm went off and I pressed snooze 5 times until I had to get out of bed. It's just enough to blunt that edge. And then the next day, I wouldn't feel like I was a complete letdown. I'd just feel slightly off. And that's the part that took me so many years to understand. Self-destruction rarely feels explosive. It feels subtle. It feels like you're 5% underneath the standard that you're living at, that you want to be living at. But that 5% spreads. Your body softens so much that your posture changes. Your mind scatters so many ways that you can't really focus properly anymore. And your business plateaus just enough for you to blame timing and the rest of the world instead of execution. And you start saying things like, oh, I'm just a bit busy right now, or it's just a phase, or I'll tighten things up next week. But next week has never been urgency, because nothing is wrong. That's the real trap. When your life is in chaos and you hit a rock bottom moment, at least you're forced to make a change. But when your life's just slightly off, you're allowed to drift. And drifting feels safe. It doesn't feel dramatic. But let's break down what that misalignment actually looks like. And we'll start with the first B, body. You don't need to be shredded. You don't need to be a bodybuilder on stage. You don't need abs that are sharp enough to cut glass and be popping through your t-shirt. But you know when you're operating below your own physical standard. You know when you're training reactively instead of structurally. You know when your energy dips. Not because you're overworked, but because your habits are inconsistent. And when your body's inconsistent, your nervous system becomes inconsistent. Your confidence starts to fluctuate. Your presence fluctuates. Your certainty fluctuates. You don't walk into rooms the same way when you know you've been renegotiating with yourself. Now we're going to get onto the second B, which is being. This is where it starts to get a little bit uncomfortable, because this one is invisible for the most part. This is where you say that you value discipline and being locked in, but you constantly negotiate with your own word. You say you're going to get up at 6 a.m. and train and do bits, but you snooze because you slept late scrolling on social media. And you say that you'll make the awkward phone call, but you tell yourself it's not the right time. You say you'll stop doing something that holds you back, and then you quietly allow yourself to do it again. And every time you renegotiate with yourself, you lose just a microscopic amount of that internal trust. And it's never enough to cause panic, but it's just enough to feel slightly off. And that low level tension in your chest, that's broken micro promises started to stack up. And then let's talk about the final B, business, because you're busy, you answer emails, take calls, attend meetings. But are you decisive and effective, or are you hiding inside busyness? Because there's a difference between activity and alignment. Because you can work 10 hours and still avoid that one action that would actually create some real momentum. You can be exhausted and overworked, but still be stagnant, because busyness without direction creates zero momentum. And that's why you feel like you're still behind, even when you're working hard. Now, here's the painful truth. You don't lack potential. You lack integration, because your body moves in one direction, your being drifts in another, and your business hesitates in the third. And then you expect to be able to feel powerful. But power doesn't come from intensity. It comes from being aligned. It comes from congruence. Because when your physical standards, mental discipline, and your financial execution move together, something shifts within you. The noise gets quiet, the restlessness dissolves, and you stop feeling slightly off because you're no longer fragmented. Because I remember one specific night that made all this so obvious to me, because I'd trained hard that week, I'd eaten clean, I'd done all the visible work, all the stuff that seemed like it had to be done that was important but wasn't really important, but I'd avoided one uncomfortable business decision that I knew needed to be made and would move the needle forward. But I justified not taking action, told myself I need more clarity, more time, more information. And that night, sitting there in silence, I realised something. It wasn't my body that felt off. It wasn't my discipline in the gym. It was the misalignment between what I knew I should execute and what I was avoiding. And that avoidance was bleeding into absolutely everything else. I was sharp physically, but scattered mentally, and stagnant financially. Soft body, scattered mind, stagnant income, because you can fix one and still feel off if the others are leaking. That's why the slightly off feeling doesn't just disappear when you get yourself a new workout plan and a new regime or a new productivity app or random bursts of motivation that come and go like a sugar rush, because motivation doesn't integrate. Real structure does, because you're not lazy, you're just divided. And division creates anxiety, not the loud kind, but the quiet kind. That kind that shows up when nothing is wrong, but when nothing feels powerful either. That kind that just whispers, you know you're capable of more, and then watches you scroll instead of taking action. You know what alignment feels like. You've experienced it before. It's that it just feels right. A week where you trained daily, executed the uncomfortable task, you ate clean, slept properly, and followed through. You remember how lit up you felt, alive. Not because life was easier, but because all of a sudden you were integrated. You didn't feel slightly off. You felt certain, and certainty is addictive. It makes you feel locked in, but it requires enforcement. One physical non-negotiable, one mental non-negotiable, and one financial non-negotiable. Income generating activities every day. Not 10 things, 3 areas. Because when those 3 move together, momentum starts to compound on itself. But when one leaks, the fragmentation begins, because you don't need chaos to wake you up. You need honesty. Where are you slightly off physically? Where are you renegotiating with yourself mentally? And what income generating activities are you avoiding doing? Because that's the leak. And the leaks compound into every other area of your life. Because you can survive misalignment for years, but you can never feel truly powerful inside it. So if this feels uncomfortable, comment the word align, and I'll send you a free copy of the alignment blueprint. It's not for motivation, but for structure, because alignment's not about hype. It's about integration. And when the body, being, and business align, you stop feeling slightly off and you feel grounded. So comment the word align or click the link in the description and get your free copy of the alignment blueprint. Because that version of you out there, he doesn't drift, he doesn't negotiate, he doesn't feel divided, he just moves forward with aligned action. And that changes absolutely everything. So I'll see you in the next video, but don't bother clicking on it if you're not going to get your copy of the alignment blueprint. Let's fucking have it.